not spread the fake news.
I'm Jacob, and I didn't spread the fake news.
I'm Evelyn, and I did not spread the fake news.
I'm Matt, and I did not spread the fake news.
I'm Tanya, and I did not spread the fake news.
I'm Ron, and I did not spread the fake news.
One is a liar. If the group discovers who the liar is, they get to absolve the charges against them. If the liar survives, he or she gets to win and get away with spreading misinformation, which will cause trouble around the globe.
So we all start by telling why each of us is here.
Since we're living through a pandemic, I think it's fairly easy to come across the news and fall for it, whether it's the truth or not. And I, for one, did come across a lot of them, but I never would be the one to create them.
To me, I tend to aimlessly scroll around the internet and just try to share anything that's funny to my friends. But I really wouldn't think of spreading false information to anyone, as I feel like that's something really dangerous to do.
I only have a particular set of news channels and sources I believe in, and so for me to fall for something that's fake is kind of absurd. So, I would never believe in something that easily.
So fake news has always been a threat to society, and especially with the rise of tech platforms, it's a threat to media as well. You never know when you could be at the wrong site at the wrong time. And I, for one, wouldn't ever want to be in that position nor put someone in it.
For me, fake news is actually really disturbing because how does one really tell the difference between something that's real or fake? So whenever I read a news article, I always tend to do research because I don't want to be spreading misinformation to anyone.
I've grown up in a rural area, so I'm not really fond of using social media that much. The only access I have to the news is either the telly or newspaper really. And these mainstream channels usually are very trusted, so I would say all in all, I refrain from looking at fake news.
For me, it's kind of sus. I mean, yeah, sure, you can be living in a rural area, but I mean, you still might have the same chance of accessing fake news to, say, living in the urban area. So I think it holds the same amount of chances to receive that kind of fake news as to everybody else.
Tells us how to suspect fake news.
Okay, so I think one really good way of finding out how to suspect fake news is checking facts and researching. Checking the source and checking the website is obviously the way to go.
I've kind of had my head around Matt because anyone could really say that and not really believe in it, so that's kind of suspicious.
In my opinion, we should stay away from most propaganda because we need to keep a critical mindset on all things, because who knows, maybe that kind of false information can be used as propaganda, to promote propaganda, or maybe to promote some sort of biased perspective. But either way, it's not something that anyone wants to deal with.
You know, sometimes news stories might be just a little too absurd or a little out of this world, and it might be satirized, so it's worth double checking if the news is a little too much for you to handle. And also make sure that your beliefs don't cloud your judgment, because even if you want something to be true, sometimes it could mean that it's not, even if you want it to be true.
I also think, just like Matt said earlier, I think we should always check the source, check the author who spread the fake news, and also check facts before sharing it to someone.
I think what might also help is checking the comments on the post itself. What the majority thinks about the news might also lead you to finding out the truth, and whether or not you should believe it or not.
I think checking other sources is a very good idea to make sure that you're reading something true, because are other reputable news or media outlets reporting the same story, or are credible sources cited within the story? You never know. And professional global news agencies have editorial guidelines and extensive resources for fact checking. And so if they are reporting the story, that's a good sign that it's true.
Dangers of fake news, because I feel like if someone deliberately spread, they wouldn't really know the harm it would cause to the society.
That's actually a very smart idea. I feel like when people can distinguish between real and fake news, it creates confusion and misunderstanding about important issues like social and political issues. And when people have a generalized sense of you can't believe anything you read, it kind of undermines the overall trust in legitimate news sources, and so you won't really believe in anything you see on the internet after that. So yeah.
I feel like spreading misinformation about medical treatments or diseases can have a major effect onto people who hear it. For example, if it's something about COVID or cancer, people who might not really take the full information of it and may interpret it themselves, or might do other treatments that can harm themselves while doing it.
I think a lot of fake news is designed to really stir up like social conflict and stuff like that. Because when different sides of an argument have facts, or as they say, it leads to greater polarization within societies, can even affect like electoral outcomes. And I believe all of us are really familiar with the cases last year and the political controversy it caused in Malaysia. So I think it really affects society. Fake news is just really dangerous.
I kind of agree with Mark, but at the same time, he didn't really say much about how it affected society.
I would say perhaps people risk losing their savings, their retirement income, or going into significant debt by giving away hard-earned money, thinking they will get rich quick.
Universities and colleges expect students to use quality sources of information for assignments. Students who use sources with false or misunderstanding information could receive lower grades.
Honestly, I would agree to that. Yeah.
The liar is caught. Fake news has been around as long as human civilization, but it has been a turbocharged by digital technology and the transformation of the global media landscape. Now that we know how to figure out the truth between fake and real news, you might be able to understand its effect on our society and how it can make or break our delicate future.
While in the past, untruths and distortions of fact and history were successfully disseminated through word of mouth, manuscripts, and even tapestries, modern technology has created new vectors, starting with radio. Fake news, albeit inadvertently, threw Americans into a panic in the 1930s when listeners to Orson Welles' broadcast of War of the Worlds believed that an alien invasion was underway. So, what makes the phenomenon different and more dangerous today?
In order to collect public responses, we carried out a survey and we managed to collect 138 participants. The age group that participated in the survey are mostly dominated by the 10 to 20-year-old age group at 57.3%, while the next major age group are the 21 to 40-year-old age group, taking 28.9%. And lastly, 41-year-olds and above are 13.8%. In general, a huge majority of the respondents rated 4 to 7 out of 10 their trust on social media, with 32.6%, with 45 of them taking the most rate at 5 out of 10. This shows that the respondents are not over-relying on social media and the internet to obtain the news, as there are only a minor portion of the respondents rated that their trust on social media up to 8 and above out of 10. Surprisingly, 80.4% admitted that they do not get affected by the fake news and believe that they are real, while only 19.6% are lucky enough to fall in the trap of fake news.
However, the public awareness is still quite positive, as 87% of the respondents practice fact-checking before spreading the news on the internet, and only 13% of the respondents shared the news on the internet without fact-checking from the official websites. Ironically, only 63.8% of the respondents are aware of the content of the article before spreading them online, while there are 36.2% of who had experienced sharing something on social media based only on the headlines and without actually reading the full article in the first place. As for the main social platform they use to get their information, majority of 78.3% of them claim that it is from Instagram, while TikTok gets to the runner-up with 52.2% of the respondents get news from, followed by Twitter with 35.5%, Facebook getting 29%, and the television channels according to 29% of the respondents, and lastly, only 8% of them claims that they get information from Snapchat. Our report has the same outlook. With many instances of misinformation happening, we would like to highlight the deeper roots of how, why, and where this kind of false media spreads. We used external reports for our findings and also statistical analysis that we collected on our own to even further our research. Our research follows a content analysis of existing information already done and a survey that aims to interlink the personal data with the competency of engaging in the spreading and concluding information from various social media platforms and how it impacts the target audiences in the absorption of information.